And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another stupendous installment from very high above all the puerile and mendacious forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. It is a frosty Friday morning here at Cowboy State Politics headquarters. One of the good reasons that I'm very happy I'm wearing a pair of Buffalo Wool Company socks. You know, I woke up this morning, walked outside, and saw nothing but white stuff. And I mean, it's just one of those things you get used to living in Wyoming, that it is going to snow in April. And truthfully, we should be very thankful about it, however irritating it is. I told Agent 29 that if he doesn't turn the heat up in here, we're just not going to do this because I just can't operate when it's cold.
You know, that costs money.
It does. It does. Fortunately, we have almost confiscatory advertising rates on the program.
Have we?
We do. Yes.
We're gonna talk about my cut here shortly.
There is no cut. But good news, though, it is Open Line Friday.
It is.
It's Open Line Friday. Messing with my big band music. All right. Maybe that was appropriate. But it is Open Line Friday, my friends. The day where we talk about whatever you want to talk about. Not you, Agent 29.
We play whatever sound bites I want to play. It was celebratory.
It was celebratory.
Yeah.
But today is Open Line Friday, and whatever you want to talk about, we'll talk about it. You don't quite understand the grave risk that I put us under on Friday. Because, you know, most of the time during the week, you kind of have to talk about what I want to talk about. And if you don't, I just may not answer the phone, but not today. If you want to be part of the program, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. If there's something on your mind that you want to opine, give me a call. One more time, that phone number is 307-374-8989. Now, aside from that, we have a great programs ready to go for you this morning. At 1:15, we're going to talk to Representative Tony Locke. There's a little bit of confusion happening in your local assessor's office. And truthfully, there are a lot of different bills that have been passed the last few sessions concerning your property taxes. Some of them are pretty confusing. And so I thought, why not talk to the guy who probably knows a whole bunch about that. So at 8:15, we'll talk to Tony Locke and get his perspective on all of this. Maybe he can clear it up for us.
Were you guys going to talk a little bit about Pacific Power as well?
I think. Oh yeah. That's the other thing. Yeah, we'll talk about that idiotic rate hike. I mean, that thing infuriates me that we allow a company to dictate to us how much we're going to pay, which I suppose every other service, if you want that service, you have to pay for it. You know, if I want to continue having an internet connection at the studio, well, we got to pay for it. So Yeah. So we'll
Yeah,
talk to Tony about that.
But the question is, why did the rates have to go up? Are we paying?
Again.
Are we paying for all of these windmills?
I think we probably are, and I think we're probably paying for the green agenda. That the windmills, the solar panels, everything else. So, other than that, it is Good Friday, and if you are a Christian or if you're religious in any way, I'm sure you realize that it's Good Friday. But a question, first of all, it's to observe the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. So not really a great day. I mean, crucifixion, not really a happy time. And it always confused me when people said, Happy Good Friday. And what goes through my head is, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. But anyway, Good Friday, we observe the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. But kind of a question that I've always had. The Bible says that he was crucified, dead and buried, and in 3 days he rose from the dead. Well, there's kind of a problem with that because Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday morning is not 3 days and 3 nights. So I don't know. I mean, is it a load of hooey or what's going on here?
It keys on the Sabbath, and everybody just assumes that the Sabbath is Saturday. And yes, the Sabbath was a weekly Saturday. However, in the observation of Passover, there is an additional special Sabbath. And when you lay it out there and they play with the calendars and nobody knows exactly, I happen to think from some research that I've done that Jesus was actually crucified on a Wednesday, which fits with, I think it's AD 68 or something. Anyway.
Well, and
28.
I mean, we can talk about dates all we want. But the truth is that our time doesn't hardly ever line up with God's time. And the point is that you observe the sacrifice of Jesus for all of us. That's the whole point. And we can dither about dates all we want. Another good one is Christmas. We pretty much know that Jesus was not born on December 24th. And so it's just a date that we pick to observe that particular holiday. So I mean, the question is, does that call into question everything? I don't think so. Thomas Jefferson famously said, "Question with boldness even the very existence of God." And so the only way that you find out why and what you believe is by asking questions and then answering those questions for yourself, doing research, figuring out what the good book means.
There's an old book out there by a gentleman named R.A. Torrey called Difficulties in the Bible. And he takes on this one on the quote unquote Good Friday and a number of other seemingly confusing or things. And a lot of it is quite easily explained when you actually understand what Scripture says and not what people think it says.
Exactly right. And there, I think you just nailed the big point, is that we often try to transpose what we think it said to in favor of what it actually said. So in other words, it's you take your opinion, put that over everything else and think that's the facts. And it's really not. And a good example of this is rarely do we observe President's Day on Washington's birthday. Okay, that's most of the time it's not even lining up. So Christmas, Good Friday, those sorts of things. I mean, it's more of a human convenience. And, like I said, our time rarely lines up with God's time. And so the answer to all this is read your Bible. And this weekend, man, go to church. And if you don't go to church, worship with some people. Understand the sacrifice that Jesus made for all of us and the reasons behind it. So, and it's very much the important point is to answer the question of why, not necessarily to answer the question of what. So anyway, that's my take on Good Friday. Let's see here. We've got about 6 minutes. We can do this. There's a great piece in The Blaze, and it's entitled "How Self-Indulgence and Dependence Are Murdering the American Media." And it's by Chris Bedford. I've really come to like this guy. He seems to be pretty insightful. But let me just read you the first couple paragraphs here. Quote, "Don't get lost in the latest scandal. Step back and take in the American media landscape in all of its tortured absurdity. What's the narrative? What stories get elevated? What, if anything, are we supposed to learn? If your answer is not a darn thing, You're exactly right. So let's check it out. The reporters can't help themselves. Now, the top story in the American media right now, front and center above all else, is an illegal immigrant gangbanger that got deported to El Salvador. A confirmed member of MS-13. I don't care which liberal claims that it isn't. He definitely is. He's got the tattoos and the card, and I don't know if they have a secret handshake, but I'm sure he does that too.
Did you see the picture of him today released when Senator What's-His-Bucket actually got a chance to sit down with him? He's dressed in a ball cap, looking very American. He's got his plaid kind of Western shirt on, covering up all the tattoos, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, it was kind of an amazing picture. And they're sitting there in a cafe in the hotel, and there are a couple of margarita glasses in front of them, which I guess were set there.
Right.
It's a dog and pony show.
And that's exactly what it is. This guy's a gangbanger. And I've got a couple of articles here. Let's see. They're in the stack of stuff, but talking about this guy, he's not just a dad from Maryland. He's an illegal alien that's been arrested before. He's suspected of human trafficking, drugs. He was arrested with a large amount of cash and drugs. So clearly not the paragon of virtue that the media is trying to make him out to be. So you might have missed that detail amid the wall-to-wall overwrought coverage of a Maryland father dragged from his home. But his case perfectly illustrates the media's favorite tactics: obfuscation, distortion, and outright lies. Turn on the news or pick up the paper. Good luck learning that the man in question was selected for deportation in not 2025, 2019. Denied his initial appeal based on asylum because if he was a refugee, he should have applied for that from the outset instead of 7 years later when facing deportation.
Who was president in 2019?
Oh, that would have been Trump.
Checking.
Yeah, just checking. He was denied a second appeal under the Convention Against Torture Treaty, but on the third appeal, he was told he needed to be deported to a country that was not El Salvador. I mean, this is so ridiculous. And it's, if you just go to any social media platform, you'll see libs, redcoats claiming that this is the greatest tragedy that has ever befallen anybody. And I have just one thing to say. I will consider, and just, hear me out, Agent 29. I will consider your arguments about due process concerning this guy, about maybe he may have been deported. I'm always questioning everything, what's right, what's wrong. But I will start to consider those when I hear every Democrat rescind everything they said about every January 6th prisoner. Most of those people were held without trial in solitary confinement for months. And I've seen on social media, these people, they finally got their trial. Oh, really? Yeah, they did, I'm sure, after months of being in solitary confinement. So once you say that all of that was wrong, then we can talk about this MS-13 gangbanger human trafficker who's an illegal alien.
January 6th, those people were probably residents.
Yeah.
Guaranteed due process.
Yeah. American citizens.
I read a deal that said statistics show that immigrants, is how they phrased it, are more law-abiding than normal citizens. In order for that to be true, every normal citizen has to be a lawbreaker.
Yeah.
Because every immigrant that they're talking about broke the law to get here.
And that's just the thing, right? They're talking about all these migrants, and they're just coming for a better life. They're fleeing oppression. And the very first thing you do is break our laws. By definition, that act qualifies you for deportation. That you should have never been here in the first place. And if you're a violent criminal and member of a street gang, a really violent street gang, which, their motto is rape, torture, kill. I mean,
I have to throw this in there too. Well, it's really hard to immigrate. Well, guess what? My daughter-in-law did that. Cost a lot of money, took a lot of time, but we did it by the book.
Yeah, nothing good comes without hard work. So anyway, this gangbanger, he's back home where he belongs. Everybody needs to go to their home, Agent 29. Everybody. And I'm so happy that he is able to walk into his home country. I'm sure he's probably kissing the ground, or maybe not, because he's in a terrorist prison. Well, anyway, let's go to our first break. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Tony Locke, Representative Tony Locke, and we're going to see if we can iron out all this tax business. I don't know. He was there. I was there. Frankly, most of the time, I didn't quite understand what the heck he was saying, but we'll ask him to figure it out here in a minute. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. If you miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics Live, you can always go to the live replay, which is located at the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, under the live replay button. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone. Documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. Go ahead and give that a try, Trotsky. You could just start trying to tell the truth. I don't know if that's even possible, but I'd like to welcome onto the program Representative Tony Locke from Casper. Tony, welcome to the program.
Having me. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah, man. First time on Cowboy State Politics Live. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I kind of like the part where I don't have to be on the video better, but that's okay.
Yeah, that takes a little getting used to. So it's been a while since you've been on the show. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to my audience?
Tony Locke. I'm Tony Locke. I'm support House District 35 down here in Casper. I'm kind of on the southeast side of Casper. I'm in the middle of my second term now. Basically just went through my third legislative session, and it was, as always,
interesting,
fun, wild, and woolly ride. And I'm kind of glad to be back home, but the work has not ended, believe me. So
excellent. Well, you just recently had a town hall in Casper. How'd that go?
Yeah, had a great town hall. Had a good mix of people. Some that I would say were my echo chamber, and quite frankly, many that were not. But it was great. Lots of good questions. Lots of people came out. There was a lot of discussion on property taxes and those kinds of things that came up. And kind of one of my favorite topics, as you well know, it's been my battle pretty much since I've been in to get property tax relief and reform moving forward. But it was a really good town hall. I thoroughly enjoyed the questions and comments. And a lot of people say, hey, they don't like the dissenters, but quite honestly, I enjoy the dissenters. because the nice thing about when you go into this job and you take an honest approach, the good news is we have nothing to hide. We have nothing to run from, and no place we need to run to. We just say, hey, I voted for this because this was my principle.
Right.
Quite honestly, we found that in the town halls, even when they've come with the intent to disrupt, when you're speaking the truth and you're speaking to your core values and your core principles, it's easy, in my opinion.
I totally agree. I mean, the truth is always pretty easy. And if you compare the town halls you guys are doing with what Harriet's gone through, the folks that come to disrupt the event, they're not there to have a conversation. And, I don't know how you get past them except to let them see how ridiculous they're being themselves. Well, you mentioned that one of your big things during the legislative session was property taxes. And you mentioned two words, and I'd like you to quickly define what those words are. Reform and relief. And I think that a lot of people try to use those terms interchangeably, but what do you mean by those when you use them?
So a lot of what we've done so far, I would define as relief. And in many cases, very short-term relief, because you've seen that we've increased the property tax refund program over the last 2 years. That's just increasing some relief to people who need it. We did the long-term homeowner property tax last year. That is what I again would say relief. And in the case of that bill, short-term relief, because that was only a 2-year bill that sunsets in 27. So that's one of those bills. Again, short-term relief. It is all we're doing is, yes, we're putting a little bit of money or leaving a little bit of money in your pocket, but from two perspectives, it's only relief. It doesn't get us to a point where, so let me back up. So it's relief. Even this latest exemption is simply relief, because what we have not done reform where all of a sudden we have another one of those ridiculous spikes we saw in the 5 years. There was a little bit of reform implemented with House Bill 45 last year. And House Bill 45, what it did was it put a 4% cap. Last year, that cap was on residential structure only. This year, in 2025, that 4% actually caps the residential structure and the associated land. So one would say, hey, that's a start with looking at relief. But keep in mind, these exemptions, they can go away. One legislature walks in and they're gone that quick. And there are a number of issues with that reform. And this is one of the things I try to remind everybody about. Let's just take that 4%, for example, and I'll use a 5% number. Most people don't realize that. If you just increase your house value by 5%, that means you double your property tax, right? That means you double your property tax every 14 and a half years, roughly. So by the time you've paid off your house, 30 years, 29 years actually, you've quadrupled your property tax. So the question I always ask everybody, do you own your house? Now, if it's 4%, okay, you double your property tax every 17 years. You still have to ask the question, do you own your house? So in my mind, more robust reform is necessary, where we take a look and say, hey, are we going to recalculate somebody's fair market value based on every other market condition every year and bump that up? That's why I'm more in favor of things like acquisition value and things like that put true reform in place rather than these what I would call relief issues, or these relief approaches that we use.
All right. So to put it pretty simply, relief is taking 2 Tylenol when you have a headache. It's not necessarily figuring out why you have the headache. And then reform is figuring out, well, maybe we have a spending brain tumor and you need to solve that.
There you go. So you took the easy approach and I confused everybody on your podcast.
All right. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the program is Agent 29 picked up this brochure in the assessor's office, and it is probably the most confusing thing that I think that I've ever seen. And let's go ahead and throw it up on the screen, and I'll let's see here. There we go. And I don't know if you can see this or not, Tony, but I know that you, let's see here. Slideshow. There we go. From current slide. Okay. So here's what the pamphlet that I picked up from, or that Agent 29 picked up from the assessor's office. And that's the first page. And then let me show you the second page. Here's the second one. And it's got, the state statute, and you might qualify if you own your home, if you paid residential property taxes. And then there's a whole list of 145% of the 2024 median household income. And, Tony, as I recall, the law that we passed was, Senate File 69. It was 25% across the board. So can you try to make sense out of this dumb thing put out by the Department of Revenue for me?
Sure. So what this is more closely related to is the property tax refund program. Now, I notice in this brochure that's out there, it does talk about other things that are available to people. For example, currently, and I know you'll see that on that first page, you see that deferral program. Currently, I think only Teton County is actually using that. That was a program that was put out some time ago that the counties could opt in to use. And I believe Teton County is the only county using it right now. So yes, this brochure was confusing to me as well as I go through it. Even once you as you start to move down into the property tax refund program, it gets a little bit confusing because it talks about the 145%. And I don't even remember if in this brochure, if it mentions it does talk about the 125 or the 145%, but it doesn't make it very clear actually what you're getting there when you read through it, in my mind, at least. I think they tried to quote the statute on that second page there.
Yeah.
And that breaks it down where I believe at that 125%, I think that 125% gives you the 75% refund, and then the 145% gives you a smaller amount. I don't remember the exact percentages, but basically that's what we did last year. But I agree, the brochure is more than a little confusing.
Well, here's the problem, right? We've got all these different exemptions, and I am no fan of exemptions. I think that that's picking winners and losers. I think that you're favoring one group over another, and it's super, super confusing for homeowners because, if you're old, you get an exemption. If you've lived in your house for a long time, I don't know how the average homeowner makes sense out of all this. And then we throw on top of it that you get a 25% reduction across the board. So, if you can, Tony, in plain and simple terms, how do Wyoming homeowners get a reduction in their property taxes? Do they get all of them? Can you have all the exemptions, or can you pick one? Make sense out of this for me.
Sure. It does get more than a little bit confusing. So let me talk through this. So this is, as I mentioned, this is really that tax refund program, this brochure. It's talking primarily to the tax refund program. That's a program that we've had in place for quite a while, and it's changed a little bit, but for the most part, it's a means-tested refund program where people, if they are below certain income levels and below certain other means tests, they are allowed to get a refund. So that's the simple implementation of this program. Now let's talk about more recent things that have passed. Last year, not in 2024, we passed a bill for long-term homeowners. So if you're 65 years old and you've been paying property tax in the state for 25 years or more, we put in a long-term homeowners exemption. So that one, starting this year, and the deadline is coming up, I think sometime in May. If you're 65 or older, living in a state and paying property tax for 25 years, you absolutely need to apply. You need to go to your county office or request it from the Department of Revenue, but you need to get the application and apply for that because that's a big exemption. So that's a 25%, or excuse me, that's a 50% exemption on your property taxes. But it is only good for 2 years. So it's going to be available to people in 2025 and 2026. And I believe the deadline on that, let me look real quick. I couldn't remember, but I know it's sometime in May. So I've been telling everybody it's the 1st of May or the 30th of April, because I don't want anybody to miss out on that, anybody who could possibly take advantage of that one. And I think it's either the 3rd or 4th week, or it's either the 2nd or the 4th week of May, but I tell everybody, put your deadline as the 30th of April, make sure you apply if you fall into that category. Now let's go to Senate File 69. That's the one everyone's going to get a break on, okay? And starting this year, it will get applied to your 2025 taxes, which you'll be paying in your upcoming session. But that one actually applies a 25% exemption for all residential property tax payers. And it applies to the residential structure and associated land, okay? So the specific house, the house that you live in, and the land. So that's what it applies to. Now, that one is, the way that one passed was in this first year, people do not have to apply for that one. That one's going to be applied across the board. That one changes a little bit starting next year because it goes to a program. It's still the 25% on the residential structure and land, associated land. However, you then have to verify that you've lived in a home for 8 months. So it's for owner-occupied homes only is what it's for moving forward. So I don't know if I explained that very well, but the key to that one is that starting next year, I don't exactly know how, I know that the Department of Revenue is going to be promulgating rules pretty quickly here. So I don't know if they'll send something out for you to sign and verify your owner, that it's your owner occupied, or if you'll have to fill out an application. So the actual procedure there is still being worked on by the department, and I don't know exactly how that'll be.
Okay.
But that's how all line up. And sorry, you asked another question.
Well, no, I mean, I think that kind of clears things up. I mean, it's still horribly complicated. And one of the reasons for that is we still have not done any sort of property tax reform. It's all just been, Band-Aids. So we're going to take a break, Tony. And if you've got a minute, if you got a little bit, I want to hold you over to the break. And then we'll talk about that rate hike. I know you're fired up about that one.
Here at U.S. Coin Capital, we hear from Americans across the United States who have a growing concern about the future purchasing power of U.S. paper money. Many Americans are looking for an alternative for long-term capital. For more than 35 years, the people at U.S. Coin Capital have educated American investors on how to properly accumulate United States gold and silver coins. Call us at 1-800-878-2646 or visit us on the web, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics.
Some say standing up for what you believe in is being extreme. Ask any woman in Wyoming. They'll tell you this is called courage. The mainstream media claims that holding the line on important issues is being unreasonable. My mom taught me this is called staying true to our principles. In other places, people argue you always have to compromise to get something done. Here in Wyoming, we know that some things are worth protecting at all costs. Some say it's time we give up on the values that made our state great to accommodate toxic culture. I say it's time to stand tall and protect the values that have served Wyoming well for over 134 years. Join Honor Wyoming as we defend and preserve the Wyoming way of life. Find out how you can make a difference today.
Visit honorwyoming.org. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, doing what I was born to do each and every day with talent given to me by God himself. We should be talking about God on Good Friday. I think that we should all be very thankful for the gifts that we've been given. And I, my friends, have been given the gift to sit behind this microphone every day for you. Well, we still got Representative Tony Locke with us. And before the break, we were talking about property taxes. And the one thing I think that we forgot to mention, and I just want to make this clear, is that if you're a veteran, we do have a veterans exemption, and that you can have that one on top of any other exemptions. Isn't that right, Tony?
That's correct. And one thing, David, if you don't mind me clarifying, I just want to make sure your listeners know this. You should always, anybody who qualifies for that property tax refund, you should always apply for that. Second in that order is if you qualify for that long-term homeowner, that is absolutely second. That's a 50% break. Well, refund can actually go up to 75%. The long-term homeowners is 50%. And then finally, for those of us that don't qualify for those two, you get the 25%. I wanted to make it clear that order is important. And then, of course, the veterans exemption, they get that on top as well, which is good. But for example, you can't get the long-term homeowner and the 25%. You can't do that. Those two are exclusive, one or the other. So please make sure you take them in the proper order and take advantage of those for your family, and make sure you leave the right money on your kitchen table.
All right, great. Now, another issue, and I just want to switch gears with you, and because this next one, you've been, as far as I know, you've been one of the main people that's been fighting the Rocky Mountain Power rate hikes. And, how much money do these people really need? I mean, they have enough windmills. Why do we have to keep paying for more?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, this has been a battle that I've been in for now, I think at least 2.5 years or something, fighting back against Rocky Mountain Power. It's a nonstop barrage of rate increases for our people here in Wyoming, and it's been terrible. And over the last 18 months, even though this last request was for an additional 14.7%,
ridiculous.
Even though we were able to push back and get it knocked down to 10.2%, their rate increases have been over 30% in the last 18 months. So you think about it, I'm telling you, the Rocky Mountain Power ratepayers, they've got rate fatigue. And if people really understood at the core of a lot of these, what's being heaped on their bill, they would be very frustrated. I know I've fought back. I've tried to rally as many people to these meetings as we possibly can. We've been successful on occasion. I mean, a little over a year ago in January of 24 now, we pushed back on that rate case in late 23. We got 300 people here, almost 300 people here in Casper to push back, and we got a 29.2% rate case dropped down to 8.8%. And so I was grateful. That's still too much, but I was grateful. But they turned right around. Rocky Mountain Power sued the state and then gave us another, I don't know. It's enough to push us over. This 10.2% pushes us over 30% now.
Absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know that a lot of people really understand how this works. I mean, to most people, they get the bill from Rocky Mountain Power, they open it up, and like, crap, my electric bill just went up again. But it's not necessarily as simple as that. That Rocky Mountain Power says, hey, we're going to charge you more. We've got the Public Service Commission. So how do those people figure into this whole thing?
So that's right. So Rocky Mountain Power has to bring their case to the Public Service Commission. And then, of course, the Public Service Commission has public hearings, but then they make the decision with a whole spectrum of people involved in that process. The public, several large organizations, and other things that get involved in the rate case, or excuse me, in the rate request increase, and try to push back on them. And there's statutes governing that say, hey, all rate cases have to be a fair and reasonable request. I don't know if I'm quoting the law exactly, but there's laws that govern that. But it's very frustrating when you start looking at the things that they're heaping on us here in the state. For example, I know in many of these rate cases, they talk about additional transmission. So they're talking about capital construction, additional transmission to new wind farms. Well, Wyoming, we're an 85% electric exporter, right? And what advantage to us is new wires, new transmission to a new wind farm? How does that help our rate case? And what they end up doing is they are able to push their capital expenses. Now, you think about that. If a company's going to invest capital, they should know they're going to make money off of that capital, and that money shouldn't be pushed on to the ratepayers. That should mean, hey, this is electricity we can sell to somebody else and make money. But no, our ratepayers are paying some of that.
Well, and that's always been my question. Why should I have to pay for the construction of your new windmills when we already produce the more than enough energy than the entire state can consume? And I think that this kind of goes to a larger problem in that we have public-private partnerships. Now, without the Public Service Commission, Rocky Mountain Power could just say, well, we're going to raise your rates, 50% or 60%. So there would be no control. But it seems to me that, and this is just my opinion, but it seems to me that maybe there's some folks on the Public Service Commission that, aren't advocating for Wyoming citizens. When you have increase after increase after increase, I mean, that's the only conclusion that I can draw. I mean, what's your take on them?
Sure. And I think in some cases, so I'll go back to the rate case that we were fighting very hard a year ago. I think they were very receptive and they listened. And I was grateful to the people of Wyoming. We had huge crowds here in Casper and Riverton. People showed up in Cheyenne and testified, and the Public Service Commission really responded to that. On this rate case, they asked some great questions in the process. In fact, I would argue that in the meeting in March, I guess that was a little over a month ago, they did a fantastic job of bringing out what I would argue is truth about the rate request. And quite honestly, I was surprised to see them accept the 10.2% that was put out there. It was like after they admitted that in many cases, the reason for the rate increases, they still gave them the full rate request that they had agreed to. And I was very disappointed by that.
Yeah, I mean, and there's nothing really that Wyoming citizens can do about it, because for most people, you got one choice for your power, and that's Rocky Mountain Power. And what are you going to do? Say, well, I guess I'm going off the grid. Most people can't do that.
Right.
So they really do have us kind of over the barrel. Well, anyway, Tony, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the program and talk about these. You're welcome back on the show anytime you like. If people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
So please go to my website at LockForWyo.com. If you go to the website, you'll get all my contact information. I do have a Facebook, and I never remember quite exactly how to get there. So, but I have a Facebook account too. If you start typing in Lock for Wyoming, I think you get there to my Facebook. So I'm Facebook challenged, so I have to have people help me with that. But at the end of the day, please go to my website, get my phone number, get my email, reach out to me. I'd absolutely love to hear from folks, and I really enjoy Thank you for the opportunity just to talk to everybody and get the word out.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Tony. When we come back from the program, we're going to continue. And since it is Open Line Friday, we'll probably go a little bit long today. Keep Mr. Producer doing some work here. Maybe, keep him at it. Anyway, we'll be back in a minute. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really, you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia,
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland, France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I'm stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is only going to get stronger. The program is only going to continue to expand. You can watch it on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, and on Rumble. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live. It's Open Line Friday on the program, and if you want to be part of the show, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989 is the phone number here in the show. Now, if you...
Willy-nilly.
Willy-nilly. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Producer. Well, if you missed it, we just finished talking with Representative Tony Locke, and two major issues, the property tax cuts and that whole mess, and it's a little bit confusing. And then we talked about the Rocky Mountain Power rate hike. But like I said, it is Open Line Friday, so I don't really get to choose what we're talking about, which is kind of perilous. So let's go ahead and talk with Jerry in Rock Springs. How's it going, Jerry?
It's going great. How's your blessed Good Friday doing?
Not so bad, man. It's a little cold up here in Sheridan, but I mean, it's April, so that stuff happens.
Yeah, it's Wyoming.
For sure, man. What's on your mind this morning?
Well, we was talking about the rate hikes. As long as we continue to build these new fields, we're going to have rate hikes because they got to build transmission lines to supply everyone outside of this state, and we're responsible for that. When we okay those fields, we're saying we're willing to maintain them and to give them access and to pay for that access. And this has been going on since Rocky Mountain Power took over Pacific Power.
Yeah, and one of the things I was talking with Representative Locke about is we're kind of over a barrel here. I mean, you can either pay for electricity from Rocky Mountain Power or not. And here in Sheridan, it's a little bit different. We don't have that problem, but most of Wyoming, yeah, you got one provider, and either you're going to pay them or not. And I mean, that's just as simple as, or as complicated as it gets.
Yeah, as long as we're building these things, we're going to have it. It's a fact, because they need these transmission lines. And when I was affiliated with a power company in the industry, this has been a while. I've been retired for going 10 years now, but it was over $1 million a mile for a transmission line. I can't imagine what it is today. But then you have to hire people, you have to maintain those lines, and we're doing this for other states, especially states like California, that was a big problem when it came to shutting down the coal industry, which was about 6 to 7 times 20 years ago cheaper than solar.
Yeah, and again, Rocky Mountain Power has a monopoly, and there's nobody that's really competing with them. So, what are we going to do? You got to have electricity or not. I mean, I guess you could buy a whole bunch of solar panels and do it yourself. But what do you happen when you got a week of today's where it's snowing all the time? So anyway, Jerry, I appreciate the call, man, and you have a good weekend and a happy Easter, and you just take care of yourself, man.
All right, and God bless our republic, and thank you.
God bless our republic. All right, it still is Open Line Friday on the program. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. And like I said, we'll probably go a little bit long today. There's a couple of stories that I want to get to. And one of them, your illustrious host seems to have made a little bit of some news. Now, I don't really relish the idea that I'm in the Wyoming turkey vulture, but it's true. I am, and I think that anytime that my name shows up in the Sheridan mess or the Buffalo Bull crap or the turkey vulture, or God help them if they actually print my name and the name of Cowboy state politics in the cow pie. But they really don't do it because they want to. I mean, it's almost like they have to. So this is a piece that was written in the Sheridan mess by Joseph Baudette. Yeah, the same guy that lied about the Sheridan GOP and that said we weren't going to have a legal election. That's another matter, though. But this one has to do with a resolution that I got passed in Sheridan County. And most resolutions, if you've ever been part of the party, most of them are kind of meaningless. I mean, they're just policy statements of opinion. We, the Sheridan or the Republican Party, believe that killing babies is wrong. Well, of course we do. But rarely do any of them have any sort of action in them. And I wanted to change that. And so I wrote a resolution that said, hey, if we're going to pass this, we're going to have our chairman set up a committee to watch all of the spending in the county and the city. And as I've told you on numerous occasions, the county spent $2.7 million on a flower pot, and it's an ugly one, by the way. And the irony is they used money tagged for roads and bridges to remove a road. Wonderfully ironic. But I mean, that's just one instance. And so at the other night at the city council meeting, they were discussing how much of our money that they're going to give to nonprofit organizations. And before I get into this piece, I want to mention two things in the Wyoming Constitution. The first one is Article 3, Section 36, and that says that the state can't give any money to anybody that is not under the absolute control of the state. And that last part, absolute control of the state, is listed in the Wyoming Constitution. Now, that's at the state level, But we could make an argument that that also applies to other, other governmental entities, and the municipalities, cities, counties, towns, whatever. And the other one is Article 16, Section 6, and that one says we can't give any money to any organizations except for necessary support for the poor. And that's a phrase that the legislature tries to bloody up whenever they can, try to stretch it to mean anything that they want. If they want to spend money, well, it's obviously help for the poor. Even though, we may be cloud seeding and, wasting money on rural broadband, but that is necessary support for the poor. So, I mean, it gets stretched all over the place. Well, let's see here. Let me just show you. So throw this up on the screen, Ken. All right. So this is a list that was given out at the Sheridan City Council, and it's all of the nonprofits that they're going to give money on and money to. One of them is the Sheridan Arts Council, the Sheridan County Chamber of Commerce, the Sheridan Conservation District, and the one that really gets under my craw is the Second Chance Cat Rescue. Yeah, we already have one pound. Now we apparently need two of them. But if you look down at the bottom of the screen, and it's on the right-hand side, all the way down at the bottom, there's a number that says $509,500. And that's the amount of money that, and they haven't voted on this yet, but that's the amount of money that they want to give to all of these nonprofits. And if you look through the list, a whole bunch of them have nothing to do with supporting the poor. So anyway, I just wanted to show that to you because it is an absolute waste of your money. So that's why I wanted to throw this resolution out there. And let me just read a couple of paragraphs for you. And I quote, the Sheridan County Republican Party Central Committee aims to keep an eye on local government spending. Precinct Committeeman David Iverson sponsored and the Central Committee approved a resolution last week. It directs the party chair, newly elected Chairman James Temple, to create a standing committee to report to the Sheridan County Republican Party Central Committee on spending by the Sheridan County Commissioners, the Sheridan City Council, and the Sheridan School Board. And the whole idea is instead of sitting around complaining about our problems, I thought that we should actually do something. And one of the things that we can do is monitor how these redcoats are spending all of our cash. And like I just showed you, there's a whole bunch of list of things that they spend money on that are just absolutely outrageous.
What right do you have to question these agencies?
Oh, yeah. That's what Sheridan County Commissioner Nick Siddle said. We shouldn't question any of these departments. And, I mean, they're responsible and they spend our money appropriately. Yeah. On the dog and cat shelter. Let's see here. There's a couple of, here we go. From the piece, city councilor.
Dogs and cats are poor.
Well, some of them are because most of them are homeless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you no heart?
Yeah. Well, we could probably classify them as feral cats. Feral cats are a pest, and under Wyoming law, you can shoot them. Anyway, from the piece, and I quote, City Councilor and Republican Precinct Committee man Terry Weasel, his name is Weitzel, but he's Weasel on this program, said he thinks that the committee is unnecessary. In Weasel's opinion, the City Council and the County Commission spend money responsibly. Quote, we don't just spend money willy-nilly. We just had the soundbite. That's okay. Anyway, that is
willy-nilly.
There we go. Willy-nilly. So Terry Weasel is absolutely out of his mind. And, sitting through that city council meeting, the funny thing is I'm in the audience and, they would be talking about, hey, we don't want our money going to salaries, which a lot of those entities that I showed you on the screen, yeah, we're paying for their salaries. But he'd act like he was going to say something, and I would just shake my head like, and you'd see him sit back down.
That was kind of funny because I was just sitting there ready to press the willy-nilly, and then I thought of another one, moved off of that panel. I was going to bring you a surprise, but anyway, as for willy-nilly.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Exactly. And so, of course, all of the people that would argue against this would say, well, there's no need for it. We spend our money appropriately. Well, the truth is, They don't. When you're spending $2.7 million on a flower pot or $36,000 on the statue of a rabbit downtown, you are not spending my money appropriately. And it's, this happens at every level of government in every town. And it is up to us citizens to monitor what they're doing. And if we don't, it's our darn fault that we didn't do that. Let's move to some national news real quick. And by the way, it's Open Line Friday. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number is 307-374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call. So we've been talking a lot about this illegal alien gangbanger. Garcia is his last name. But what we found out is that the judge that is preventing Donald Trump from deporting migrants, she volunteered for Obama and Pocahontas herself. And I quote from the Daily Wire, the federal judge who temporarily blocked President Donald Trump's decision to revoke the temporary legal status of 500,000 migrants volunteered for and donated to prominent Democrat politicians, including former President Barack Obama and Senator Pocahontas. United States District Judge Indira Talwani was the latest left-wing judge to stonewall Trump's agenda after she stopped his administration from revoking the legal status of migrants from Haiti, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. Now, this is a problem, and this is only kind of, tangential, that's the word I was looking for, to what's in the article here. Words mean things. And the definitions of words mean things. And the problem is that we as conservatives, we tend to slip in to this, I don't know what you call it. I mean, it's definitely a devious plot by leftists. But what they try to do is manipulate language so that you end up agreeing with them. So this is the Daily Wire. The Daily Wire was started by Foster Friess. That's where Foster Friess, Tucker Carlson was part of it. So serious journalists, people that are conservatives, and it's still a conservative publication. But I want you to listen to this one more time. And I quote, the judge tried to stonewall Trump's agenda after she stopped his administration from revoking the legal status of migrants from Haiti, Venezuela, Nicaragua. They're not migrants if you come into this country illegally. They're illegal aliens. Let's get it right.
I read the other day that I think it was 60% or 67%, excuse me, of all injunctions, nationwide injunctions, have come against the Trump administration.
Oh, yeah. It's a staggering amount.
It is a plague.
And it's like that joke I made, I guess it was earlier this week or last week, that Trump has decided to abdicate the presidency to become a much more powerful district court judge. Now, when you talk to, and by the way, there's a great answer to this in the Harriet Hageman interview, in which I asked her about all these district court judges. And, her point was, look, they only have jurisdiction over that district. They don't have jurisdiction over the entire country. But a lot of judges are just writing an order completely outside of their authority to say, oh, this covers everything. So a district court judge, apparently in California, can decide what is legal and what is not legal. And that's even there. That's a misnomer too, because it's just that judge's opinion. It's absolutely outrageous. And when we find out that the folks that are making these decisions, Boasberg, this Talwani person, they're just activists. They are left-wing activists that were put on the court by Barack Obama or Joe Biden, or pushed through by
willy-nilly.
Willy-nilly pushed through. I mean, it's just absolutely stupid. And again, the only thing that we're going to be able to do to stop this is if we continue to question with boldness, to question our elected officials, and make sure that we know what they're going to do when they get in office. If they tell us something, well, we should probably hold them accountable, just like Weasel needs to be held accountable, and Nick Siddle, and it's pretty hard to hold Bridget Hill accountable, but we should. She really hasn't done her job, and now she's on the Supreme Court. So we have to hold her boss accountable, Governor Mark Gordon. I mean, and your local representatives. If you're not staying in contact with them and you're not holding them to what they said, that's your fault. And I understand what I'm advocating for is a pretty gargantuan task. But, I mean, you're a citizen. I mean, we need to get back to a place where that word actually means something. Interestingly, in the Constitution, the word citizen is capitalized all the way up to the 14th Amendment. Why? Because everything up to the 14th Amendment relates to your rights. And when you get past the 14th Amendment, then we start talking about what the government can do instead of what the government can't do. When at our country's founding, becoming a citizen was a big thing. You were no longer a subject or a vassal. You weren't, you weren't a tool of the king. You were a citizen. It was a step above being just you're a vassal. So we need to get back to making the word citizen mean something. And until we do, we're going to keep having some of this. So you know what? One more piece that I found this morning doing show prep that I think is interesting. CNN data analyst, CNN, has absolutely shredded the idea that Trump voters regret their decision. Go ahead and play the soundbite.
Let's talk about Trump voters
and
how they
CNN.
feel. Do they regret their vote?
I mean, this is the big question, right? I hear all these stories, all these articles. All the Trump voters, they regret what they did back in 2024. I'm here to tell you, very few of them regret what they did back in 2024. What are we talking about? Trump voters looking back at 2024. We got a new poll out. The poll was conducted this month. What percentage would change their vote to a different candidate? We're talking just 2%, just 2%. That's not even a wide spot on the road. And then there's this additional 1% who say they would rather not vote.
All right. That's probably enough there. So the reason why I think that these things are interesting is that you have CNN, an admitted left-wing propaganda outfit, and they continue to have this guy on there that says, no, man, your narrative is all wrong. Look, people do not regret their vote for Trump, which also means that a lot of voters knew what was going to happen. I mean, he when President Trump was campaigning, he basically said, we're going to have tariffs and we're going to get back to protecting America. So I think that a lot of voters really understood what was going to happen and what he was going to do. And we're at this weird place. Actually, it's not weird. It's a situation of their own making. But where left-wing media outlets have to admit that they were wrong. And they're never going to say, we were wrong about that. But what they will do is have folks on like this analyst to, kind of soften the admission that they were wrong. And the truth is, even local newspapers should print retractions, and CNN should do that too. Well, anyway, we've come to the end of more than a busy broadcast hour on the program. Have a good weekend, my friends. Make sure you go to church. I'm David Iverson. We'll see you on Tuesday.